Welcome to Roovision Snail Farm. Today's question is how to start snail farming in Nigeria step by step for beginners. Alright, so first things first, let's talk about what is snail farming. Snail farming is basically the art of keeping snails round the clock, round the year, available all around the period for either commercial purpose or for personal consumption. So you're keeping this livestock for business or for personal use. All right, that is why we are farming snails. We're farming snails to meet the need. It could be services, it could be production, where you are meeting a specific need. And in farming snails, you need to understand that it's also like every other livestock. You need to manage it well. You need to have patience. Yes, patience in everything about snail farming. Patience is a key. It requires you to plan. It requires you to do a daily routine on how to go about your farming, your activities when it comes to the snails itself. Okay, so the first thing that you need to, as a beginner, the first thing that you need to invest in heavily, it's not buying snails, it's not setting up the farm. The first thing that you need to invest in is knowledge. Knowledge is key. Now, knowledge will make you stand out. Knowledge will save you time, and it will save you time and frustration. Because if you lack knowledge, you just be rolling around. But when you have the right knowledge in snail farming, you can run faster. Even when patience is part of the plan, with the right knowledge you are coming into the business, into the industry with, you can skip space. That is to say, there are some persons that can start their snail farm with you in the same time, but with your proper knowledge, with your right knowledge, you can scale above them faster because you know what you want and how to do it. Now, this takes us to the goal. It is the goal that actually defines everything. Some persons come into snail farming without a plan. Now, because they've been told that snail farming is lucrative, their mindset is once you want to start off your snail farm, just go to the market or go to any farm, go to anywhere and just get snails, stock them, start feeding them, and that's it. No, you need to have a goal. It is your goal that gives you the plan, that gives you a clearer picture. You are doing it for extra income, or you are doing it for commercial purpose, you're just breeding your stocks, or for meat production. Now, for every reason that you are doing it, it is that reason, that goal, that will define the setup, that will define your structure. Now, somebody that is going in for commercial and somebody that is going for personal use, the size of their farm cannot be the same. Somebody that is going in for meat production and somebody that is going in for breeding, the size of their farm is also not the same. This is two different approach, two different needs they are meeting. You're meeting the need of those that are coming in for consumption. You're meeting the need for those that are coming in to re-rear what you are breeding. It's two different sides of farm. And so when your goal is well planned from your knowledge you have in the business, it becomes easy for you to have a better setup to run the business. So your setup is defined by the goal. And this will bring us also to the species. Now, because you have an interest, you have passion to start a snail farm, you want to go into snailing. This doesn't mean that every snails you just pick and run with. Now, we have three major species of snails that we rear in Africa, right? Now we have the Ashantina, popularly known as the AA, right? And we also have the Akakatina marginata, also known as the AM. And then we have the Ashantina fulica, known as the AF. Now, these three species does not mean that we have just three kinds of snails. We have hundreds of such species inside these three species, right? So you need to understand that when you're coming in, it is your goal that defines the species that you're running for. Now, for somebody that is going, let's say for somebody that is going in for meat production, and you know people buy meat because of the sizes, you shouldn't be rearing more of the fulica for the meat production sake, because the fulica don't have this big meat like the marginata or like the Ashantina, right? So when you're coming in, you need to first of all define the species, the species aligning with your goal, because your goal is for meat production. So you go in for what gives you the size of meat that can be sellable easily, instead of going for now you want to go in for slime production. You should know that your biggest target is Mr. Shantina fulica, right? Because it produces more slime. Now this does not mean that all the snails don't have slime, or this does not mean that all the snails don't have meat, but there is a unique selling point for each species against the other. So when you're coming in into snail farming, you need to first of all know the species, know the goal you are in for. What is your goal? It is your goal that picks the species, and then you, with your knowledge, you can now run and expand in it. No, so as a learner, as a beginner, get knowledge, have a goal, get the right species before you start preparing your farm. Have the knowledge about your goal, have the knowledge about the species you want to run with before you start going into farm setup, preparing your farm. Now we're talking about preparing your farm. You also need to know that there are factors that makes it work, and there are factors that also affect your farm setup. First things first. Now preparing your farm, you need to understand that location plays a very vital role. Because snails can survive in everywhere doesn't mean that you have to carry your snails and go and start up your snail farm in the sky, right? You need to consider the areas, because these snails needs coolness, they need shade. So areas where the sun is super high should not be a place to set up a snail farm. Now, if you still must set it up, then you need to understand that you will invest heavily or invest more in regulating the environment. Now, this means that everywhere you can farm snails, if you have the capacity to regulate the environment. So the moment you regulate the environment, location does not really matters. But if you can't regulate a harsh weather into a favorable weather, then location should be looked upon deeply. There are people that have raised up their farm in wrong locations. The snails are on point. The snails are the best species. They are feeding well, but because the place, the atmosphere of the farm, the location is poor, is wrong, the snails could not make it. The farm goes down. So you also need to understand that for every setting, the pen setting matters. Now, in snail farming, the pen does not have dimensions. So there are no specific dimensions when it comes to snail pen. You build your pen according to your goal and your space. So if your goal is commercial, you should know that you are going to be doing more. Now, the only thing that you should consider when setting up your pen is the height. When it becomes too high, it looks more like a fish pond, or it looks more like a sockaway. Now, when you have a very high pain, you start having back pain, waist pain, because you keep bending every day to work in your farm. Now, when this happens over time, it's going to affect you, the farmer. So the best or the standard we work with is 2 blocks high. With 2 blocks high from the earth, your farm is okay. The length does not matter. The breadth or the width does not matter. What matters is the space you have, how to maximize it, how to manage it to the fullness for your goal. Because we've seen some persons asking, how many snails will stay in this by this? No. There is no way you can actually give a specific number by square meters. The reason is this: snails does not have a unique size. Even when you call it breeder, you call it jumbo, you call it grower, you call it point of lay. This is an age grade or age range rather. Now, because they are being ranged, they don't have a unique size. So if I tell you 20 snails in a square meter, I have not told you the size of this snails that you should put in this square meter. So it's a wrong approach when you are being told that by this size, this is the size of point of lay you should put, or this is the size of layers, breeders you should put in it. No. When you put snails in a pen, when it gets overcrowded, you will know, because you are seeing your pen, you will know that this thing is too tight. They don't have space to crawl. They are not free. When the place is too open, you also know that you need to increase it, because the more snails you also have in a pen, the better chances of them mating to give you eggs. So it's not only about overcrowding. Undercrowding is also an issue. But at the end of it all, your pen settings you know by what you have, not by the names or the size that you are being projected for. And then you also need to consider, now we're talking about the farm settings, right? We talked about the location, the pen. Now let's talk about the soil. Soil in snail farming is one strong, now they are called African giant land snail, right? Now the word land means soil is involved in their activity when they are in the wild. Now we have farms that are soilless, but we have farms that are also with soil. Now the fact that you're using soil, you should use the loamy soil. The loamy soil is easy to lose. It holds water. So you can either use loamy soil or you use sandy loamy soil. Now please do not use your sandy loamy soil to incubate your eggs. The eggs might hatch and the snails get stuck inside your incubation. So to incubate your eggs, use the loamy soil. It's better than the sandy loamy. But for inside the pen, you can use either of them. The sandy loamy holds water. It retains water longer than the loamy. But we tend to push the loamy more because loamy soil are easy to get. And as a matter of fact, they are free. But sandy loamy soil are mostly bought. You don't just see topsoil and dig. Except for specific locations that have this access to get it for free. But most times, if you want to go in for sandy loamy, you have to pay. You have to buy it. But when it's loamy, it's free. Hence, the loamy soil is always pushed as the measure because it's free to get it. Then also protect your farm. Protect your farm. Protect the environment from. Do not allow your snails to escape. When you're building your pen, make sure the pen is secure. Make sure it's secure from predators. Make sure it's secure from humans, thieves. So protect your snails. This is protecting your snails and also protecting your business, protecting your investment, protecting what you have. In preparing your farm, you should have access to water. It is very, 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 very mandatory and compulsory. As a snail farmer, you cannot do a snail farm without Water, now, do not swim in water, but you need water to regulate the temperature, the humidity of your farm environment. They need water for daily consumption. Snails drinks water. Now, as a matter of fact, every livestock that eats needs water. So, snail is also a livestock. It has mouth, it can chew, so it also needs to drink water. The body of snails is more of water. So, they need water regularly. Avoid giving your snails treated water. Do not give your snails water that are treated by with chlorine. Now, but if this is the only source of water you now have, what do? Just fetch that same water, put it under the sun directly for over 24 hours. Then the water is okay for your snails. But if you go ahead and use it like that, it's going to be killing your snails gradually. It will not happen at once, but it's going to be killing your snail bit by bit. And before you know it, your snails are dying. So avoid treated water when it comes to your snails. And then above all, your farm must have shade. Now we've seen so many persons that are farming under the sun, under the rain. No, it doesn't work that way. Snails need hideout. That is why inside the pen we provide mulching materials so that they can hide from excess wind. When they are inside their mulch, they tend to retain the water they have consumed. But when they are exposed to excess wind, to direct sun, they tend to fight back with the water that they have gathered. All right? So it is wrong not to have roof over your pen or over your farm. It is also wrong not to have the mulching material that can retain coolness, that can retain water. Now remember that when you are wetting your pen, you are not actually flooding your pen. You are cooling the mulching materials to retain that temperature, that humidity across timing, so that your snails are in it during the day. Remember, they are nocturnal animals. They are not active during the day. Now, take note here. They are not active during the day does not mean that they don't move during the day. When they are somewhere and the place is not conducive, they will crawl from that place and find a better place. So they also move during the day, just that their activities are mostly in the night. All right, so get that. So we've talked about, when talking about preparing your farm, we talked about the location, the pen, the soil, the protection, the water, the shade. Now all of these are things you need to know. Now remember, we started by saying invest in knowledge. You need to know all of this. Now you've understand that your location matters. You also know that the pen sizes has been settled. The soil has been settled. Protection has been settled. The water has been settled. The shade has been settled as well. Right? Now, let's now go back to stocking. Now, do not buy your breeding stock because it's cheap. Now, this is one big issue when it comes to snail farming. There are people that just buy snails because it's cheap. Do not buy because it's cheap. Now, this does not mean that every expensive snail are better, right? Buy your snail because they are healthy. Buy these snails because they are healthy, and the source of which you are getting these snails is legit, can be verified, can be traced. Because there are people that actually sell snails, but even the sellers don't know the source of the snails, because they are doing buying and selling. They are not being farmed, or they are not being reared by themselves. And so when you fall back to ask specific questions, they could not or might not be able to tell you what is now wrong with the snails. So because it's cheap doesn't mean it's better. And also because it's expensive doesn't mean it's better. But what you're looking at here is the healthiness of the snail. The snails you are stocking into your farm to produce for your extra income, or for your commercial purpose, or for breeding, or for meat production, should be healthy. That is where the return will start coming, and you start enjoying the business or whatever area, either for business or for personal use, that's where you start enjoying that beauty in it. So do not go for cheap, unhealthy snails. Go for healthy snails even if they are cheap, or go for healthy snails even though they are expensive. It will save you more to stock right than restocking. Because sometimes you can get it cheap and you have issues and you fall back again to buy the one you have tagged expensive to replace. So now you're spending double for what you would have spent single or spent once for. So get healthy snails and your farm will be okay. Now you also need to understand that as you're getting these healthy snails, your daily management plays a super higher what's the English now? A super higher routine benefit to keep this healthiness going forward. Because the fact that you've gotten them healthy, you need to keep them healthy as well. And this is where feeding, watering, the hygiene, the observation, the knowledge that you have gathered comes to play a vital role. Because coming in healthy doesn't mean it will stay healthy. Coming in healthy without feeding right will not keep that snail continually healthy. So you need to understand that you need to feed right. Now, when we're talking about feeding, feed your snails with rational feed, that is formulated feed, that contains all the nutrients that they need. Feed your snails with vegetables and feed your snails with fruit. You need to understand that if you are going for commercial and you are doing just vegetables and fruit, you will not cash out on time. The reason is because most of these vegetables and most of these fruit, they circle around vitamins, carbohydrate, water. But when you're adding up nutritional feed, when you're adding up formulated feed, when you're adding up a rational feed that contains grains, then you start having access to calcium, access to protein, access to fiber, access to fat and oil. Now you have the balanced meal in a single bite. So for every livestock farmer, you need to feed right. And in snail farming, feeding is what makes the difference. If your snails are not eating well, malnutrition will play in and snails will start dying gradually. So feeding is key. Water is key. We talked about water when we're talking about preparation. So your snails need drinking water all the time. As a matter of fact, every day your snails need water, and every day your snails need calcium. Now, as you're drinking water, they are feeding right. The breeding, the mating will come. Now, you also need to understand the hygiene nature. Now, this hygiene part of snail farming is one part some persons misunderstand it. Now, keeping your snail farm neat doesn't mean that you are sweeping your pen or sweeping your farm every day. Like you're turning your farm into a sitting room or into a dining table. No, that is not the hygiene we're talking about when it comes to snail farming. There are times you need to allow your mulching material to decay with the soil, to enrich the soil. Right? So, when we're talking about hygiene, it's about the feed itself. It starts with the feed, the water, the drinkers. Do not throw your feed randomly in your pen or in your farm. You see some people just get fruit, especially those that are using fruit. They get fruit, get vegetables, and they just throw it across the pen. Now, this works, but the aftermath is worse. The aftermath is bad, right? Because it's going to be producing some enzyme, some liquid, some water mixing with the soil. Now, for those that even have soil, it becomes easy because the soil is going to help you drain. For those that are doing soilless, without soil at all, the water stops on your German floor or on your floor and it remains there. Some people that are using the hunch buses are also doing the soilless. Now, when you drop your your fruit on it. It stays on your tarpaulin or your nylon, whatever that you're, or the wood. And then flies comes in and start increasing the problem of your farm. That's where you start seeing worm generating, because the fly will come and lay their eggs, they hatch and they start growing. And this worm will start attacking your snail because they will find a way to feed, a way to survive. So when we're talking about hygiene, is about how you keep all of this in your pen. Now we're going to be doing a video exclusively or deeply on this part as we run on this Roovision knowledge library series, right? So stick around. We'll be talking about all of this as we go on. Okay, so we talked about hygiene, and then be very observant. Observation. Now, snail sends messages over and over when it comes to farming, but it is few farmers that actually pay attention. Now, pay attention to what happens in your farm. When you notice that your snails are always climbing and hanging on the wall, something is wrong with the base. When your snails are always on one side, something is wrong with the other side. They always send signals. So if you are not observant, you feel they prefer there to this side. No, it's not about preference. It's not about preferring a side over a side. It's about knowing why that side is being preferred. And then make the whole place that, so that they can prefer everywhere. All right? Understand these things. Observing your snails will help you. Now, all of this is in knowledge. You need to know why they prefer here over here. Because for every farm, the sun comes from an angle and goes up from the side. This means that one side will definitely be hot during the day, cool during the night, hot during the night, cool during the... You need to observe all of this. You need to understand why your snails prefer an angle over an angle, so that you can correct and modify, improve on it. These things helps your farm to stand. Remember, we're talking about how to start a snail farm in Nigeria step by step. Now, in this episode, in this video, we've been able to address what snail farming is. We're able to talk about the goals. We're able to talk about the species. We're able to talk about how to prepare your farm. We've also been able to talk about how to stock, why you should buy a particular set of snails. And I've also been able to also cover the daily management of your snail farming. All of these things happens. Now, one advice I want to give to you quickly here is, do not rush to buy snails because you want to start up a snail farm. You just rush and buy snails without understanding, without knowing your why, without knowing your goal, without setting your goal, without understanding why this snails is better. Now, if you understand the species, you understand your goal, you get the proper knowledge, it will save you time and frustration. It will save you time, money, and frustration. Yes, time, money, and frustration. It will save you all of that, because you're not running by assumption. You're working by knowledge. So it's easier for you when you get knowledge first before you start stocking. Don't rush to buy snails. You buy some snails and before you know, you start saying, these snails are not growing as I expected, or these snails are not laying as I expected. Because sometimes what you are coming in with, maybe your mindset is to get the Ashantina laying X ability. No, the Ashantina lays more compared to the Acacatina marginata. So you could be coming with the Ashantina mindset and you are wearing the Acacatina marginata. So the outcome will be very frustrating. All right. So in that's today's answers to the question of today, and then but this will also lead us into another very important question, which is snail farming profitable in Nigeria? This is Roovision Snail Farm, and as always, we care. The Roovision knowledge library video 1. I'll see you in video 2.